The Health Secretary, well, there are some estimates that up to 70 Conservative MPs are likely to rebel against the Prime Minister when it comes to a vote on the introduction of COVID passes for entry into nightclubs and large events. One of those considering rebelling is the Conservative MP Marcus Fysh. We can join him now. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Will you definitely rebel, and why?
I will certainly, yes. I'm absolutely in favour of vaccines. I'm in favour of the booster programme that has been announced. But I don't think it's the right thing to do to introduce vaccine passports in particular. I'm okay with being a bit more cautious while we just sort of continue to analyse what happens with this Omicron wave. But it was really encouraging to hear the doctor from South Africa who was relating that generalised immunity, which we should have in the UK because 95+% of the UK population has had the vaccines or had a prior infection at this point, at least the adult population. That should mean that we hopefully follow a similar trajectory in South Africa of seeing a lot less hospitalisation and really severe problems. And hopefully this can be the sort of beginning of the end of the pandemic if we get more transmissible but much milder variants coming through.
Why are you so opposed to vaccine passports?
Because of the principle of in this country having freedoms of association, freedoms of autonomy over one's own body, and also because if you think about it, what the government's worried about, whether the vaccines prevent transmission effectively, just because you've been vaccinated doesn't mean that if you're in a large crowd, you're actually going to be less likely to transmit it anyway until people have had the boosters. So I think it's just, it's a misstep in terms of what would be an appropriate response to this, and I don't think it will have any effect anyway. So why alter the principles of the way society operates, relationship between individual and state on that basis when the evidence really doesn't suggest that there's some colossal emergency where one might think whether that's a good idea or not, perhaps a bit more seriously.
In terms, though, of restriction on freedoms, we are at the start of the spread of Omicron, and you know, as we've been discussing, it's not clear exactly where it goes and how serious it could be, but the picture that we were hearing there from South Africa is encouraging. But in terms of containing it at this stage, and if that means measures to ensure that people who are in larger gatherings either have proof of a negative test or a vaccine, does that not protect civil liberties potentially going forward in terms of ending up in the territory where there may be greater shutdowns needed and restrictions on mixing?
Well, as I said, I don't think it will be very effective anyway because the vaccines, as the government has said, don't prevent the spread. So they're completely pointless in terms of preventing spread. I would hope that, as we've heard from South Africa, this shouldn't end up being the sort of danger that the government seems to be frightened of, even though we've got literally the best coverage of general immunity possibly in the world through our vaccination program that's been a tremendous success. If we do the boosters right, there's even less reason to be fearful. So we just need to get to a point where we take proportionate and balanced decisions with regards to our public health, and I do fear that we are sort of in a febrile state where that's not happening. And the reality is we are going to get variants of this virus that may or may not be more or less serious over coming years, possibly forever, and we can't just make these knee-jerk reactions which are heavy-handed on the basis of something that may or may not happen. We sort of get new variants of flu most years before COVID came along, some of which are really have caused a lot of deaths. But we can't run society on the basis of being fearful, and that I think is a really important principle not to give up.
Marcus Fysh, thank you very much.